So recently I was taking a look at all the crap I own attributed to this little miniature painting hobby, and it got me thinking, why? Why do I need so much stuff to paint tiny plastic miniatures? Why do I keep buying more stuff to paint said tiny plastic miniatures? And is this healthy? Now, I'm not going on some long rant and I'm not going to lecture. I'm taking a different approach. Today, I'm going to embrace my overindulgence in this hobby by painting this Molten Dragon using nothing but the newest tools, gadgets, and paints in my collection. Welcome to Treehane Miniatures. This type of overindulgence in the hobby can come in many forms, and I think we all have our thing. For some, it may be the need to acquire the latest cool-looking miniature that strikes our fancy. For others, it may be buying the latest gadget that promises to take our miniature painting skills to the next level. There are tutorial programs to subscribe to, books to buy, the latest greatest brushes to spend our money on, and of course there are always more paints. That's my thing. I'm always buying more damn paint, including gimmicky effect paints. It's easy for me to justify this purchase because paint is an expendable product, so I'll eventually get around to using it. At least that's what I tell myself. The problem is that I'm collecting paint faster than I can use it. My paint collection has grown exponentially since I began painting miniatures almost 7 years ago. Paints are my latte effect, which is to say it's a purchase I make almost automatically with very little thought about how much financial sense the purchase actually makes. Anytime I see a quality paint set that I don't own on sale for $2 or less per bottle, I instinctively buy it. No thought goes into whether or not I actually need these paints or if I'll ever use the paint. I just think this is a great deal. I'll eventually get around to using it. I am going to keep talking on topic, but let me get us started painting this dragon that's in the thumbnail or we'll be here all day. I'm skipping the portion of the tutorial that covers the blue glow on the back of the dragon because I think there's enough contrast on the piece with the glowing embers of the molten chest. The chest would look better without the blue glow. But I'm using this character for massive darkness, which modifies the character's abilities based on whether they are in light or in shadow. This is why I paint the characters for this game partially in shadow. Otherwise, I would have avoided it. So let's begin by using the airbrush to lay down foundational colors all over the miniature. And yes, this is a brand new airbrush and compressor that was recently provided to me by Gallery. So I think one of the main reasons we purchase more stuff for the hobby is the illusion of motivation. I think to myself, if I just had this new paint line, I'd finally have what I need to paint this army. Or I think, with this one gadget, I will be so much more productive in my hobby. And of course, there's always the thought, with this new band of miniatures, I'll be more inspired than ever to find a gaming group to play with. The justifications go on, and these justifications work. The motivation is real, but it's also temporary. For example, this big ass dragon has been primed up and sitting on my desk behind me in every single one of my videos since the first time I showed my face on camera. That's a really freaking long time. I primed him up well over 2 years ago, but I never felt particularly motivated to complete the project. I wasn't sure how I wanted to paint him. I never decided on a color scheme or a technique to use. When Gallery sent me this new airbrush kit, it opened the door to finally paint this dragon. I knew I wanted to test their tiny compressor on a large miniature, and this guy was all ready to go. I'm not going to have any in-depth discussion about the new products I'm using in this video, but I'll link to my full review of the Gallery Turbox Mini here. The next step in undertaking this project was deciding how to paint it. Mr. Pigments sent me a set of his Wave 2 line of paints, and I was looking for a project to use them on. I thought it would be cool to paint the entire miniature using just these paints, which I mostly did. I cheated a little bit by including a couple of fluorescent inks. And I'm linking to the full review of Mr. Pigment's Wave 1 paints here, but I'll discuss some of the highlights from this new set as we continue. To seal the deal on the theme of this video, I put away my favorite Winsor Newton Series 7 Kolinsky Sable brush and decided to use a new Monument Hobbies Pro Sable brush that I purchased a few weeks ago. I picked this up because I had heard rumors that there was going to be a significant issue importing Kolinsky Sable brushes to the US, and I was looking for an alternative. I will give my full review of this brush in this video. Here it is. This brush is complete dog shit. I am a fan of Monument Hobbies Pro Acryl, but Monument Hobbies really needs to stick to making paints. I haven't always heard the greatest things about Winsor Newton Series 7 brushes, but they paint like a dream compared to this Monument Hobbies brush. The bristles on the Pro Sable brush lack spring. The belly of the brush is thin and doesn't feel like it holds enough paint. And finally, the tip of this thing is atrocious. It struggles to hold even the slightest semblance of a point. I am so unbelievably disappointed with this brush. I don't like to trash products in my videos unless they deserve it, and this brush deserves it. For context, I've used the same size 1 Winsor Newton sable brush for the detail work on every miniature I've painted over the past 2 years, and the thing is still going strong. I feel like I know how to use and properly take care of a sable brush. This Monument Hobbies Pro Sable brush left me feeling very uninspired. Speaking of inspiration, Anthraquinone Red and Perylene Green are 2 of my favorite colors from this new set of paint. So I figure why not combine the 2 colors to darken the fleshy bits around the dragon's molten innards. The darker I make the surrounding features, the brighter the glow will appear coming from the dragon's chest. I just need to be careful not to hit the glowing embers with this large brush. And this is the last time you'll hear me try to pronounce Anthraquinone Red, since it's also known as Anthrax Red in some circles, so that's what I'll call it going forward. While some colors are hit or miss in any paint set, Mr. Pigments excels at creating vibrant reds and yellows. While painting with new products can be invigorating and act as the driving force to get a new project off the ground, painting an entire miniature with all new products can be mentally taxing. Introducing 1 or 2 items to your painting setup is probably more sane. I am having fun, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend this approach. I find myself continually wanting to reach for colors I'm comfortable with using, but I force myself to use my new paints. This often means mixing my own colors, which I do enjoy, but it would be a lot easier to just grab the convenience color I have sitting beside me on my desk. These colors are great, but the paint doesn't always behave the way I expect it to. There was a significant amount of trial and error while using these paints for the first time. The burnt umber was a little more opaque than I expected. I thinned it significantly and was attempting to use it as more of a wash in the neck and head area. This meant that I had to return to the Titan buff or titanium buff to repaint the details on these areas. Being unfamiliar with every single paint I was using definitely added more work to the project and a little more mental drain. This is on me though. The new products definitely motivated me to start this project, but the restriction of using only new products is self-imposed. I could have gotten started with this project and then painted entirely within my comfort zone if that was something I was interested in doing. Chromium Oxide is another interesting color in this set. I like it as an effect paint and for mixing with other colors. This will probably replace Army Green for me as a way to model flesh and generally muck things up a little like I'm doing here on the dragon's neck. Ultimately, the burnt umber and Titan buff didn't deliver quite what I was expecting around the neck and head, so I resort to another cheat. I use a little bony matter as a wash to tie everything together. As I said, there was a lot of trial and error in this project as I experimented with these new products. Perylene Green is the last paint I want to discuss before getting back on topic. This is the star of the show in this paint set, in my opinion. It's a fantastic dark green hue that can even read as black in the right circumstances. When mixed with off-white or titanium white, it creates a cool green-gray color that I find very appealing. We'll see this in action on the skin in just a minute. This color is the main reason I didn't use every single color from Mr. Pigment's new paint set. I like Perylene Green so much that I wanted to use it everywhere. Getting back to the topic of paying for our hobby motivation, I want to return to the idea that this approach is temporary and fragile. I say that our newfound motivation is temporary in this case because it's the new purchase that drives it. We get the dopamine hit from our new product and we can't wait to see it in action. But dopamine is fleeting. Once the dopamine wears off and the allure of the shiny new product subsides, our enthusiasm wanes. This new product no longer motivates us and we're back to square one. This results in a vicious cycle where we receive rewards in the form of dopamine for each new purchase we make. Our excitement fuels a project or two and the cycle repeats. This is sustainable for only a short while in the grand scheme of things. Even if the financial cost of this method isn't a restriction, space limitations will eventually come into play. My hobby area is at maximum capacity and then some, so stimulating motivation through purchases is no longer an option for me. Next, we'll take a quick look at how well Perylene Green mixes with Titan Buff and Titanium White. This first mix is a mid-tone color for the skin, but we'll see an even brighter example when I mix it with Titanium White. I want to clarify my stance on the subject by saying that not all hobby purchases are bad. There are several occasions where a product I personally classified as a gimmick turned out to be a legitimate game-changing tool. For example, I never thought I would own a wet palette when a dry palette has served me perfectly fine for years. When I finally broke down and purchased one, I was shocked by how much it elevated my painting enjoyment. And this is kind of an interesting story because I picked up the wet palette out of necessity. You see, I used to only paint miniatures when I was at work. And as a firefighter, we would have downtime in the evenings and weekends where we'd basically hang out in the station waiting for the next call. Miniature painting was one of the hobbies I picked up to kill time while we waited. Naturally, anytime I loaded up my palette with paint, we'd get a call. I'd be gone for an hour or so, and I'd come back to a palette of dried paint. I think I mentioned this issue in a painting Discord channel or something, and somebody responded with, "Hey idiot, get a wet palette." So I did, and I've never looked back. Alright, so the story isn't that interesting, but this is how I ended up with a wet palette. Anyway, another example of a product I thought I'd never use is an airbrush. Once again, this tool has opened the door to new painting techniques I never would have tried without it. So I guess the takeaway is that not all purchases are bad. Maybe I just need to take a closer look at what's driving my decision to buy something. Am I doing it for the thrill of the purchase? Am I doing it for the marketing promise of increased productivity or to magically elevate my painting skills? These reasons are based more on hopes and not grounded in what I need. And speaking of needs, what I need to do personally is to buy paint only when I'm replacing a bottle I've used up. I need to implement a one in, one out rule. That would work wonders to reduce my clutter problem. Let's see, so I haven't done much to describe what I'm painting here, so let's focus on that for a bit. I base coat the dragon's fire tube with anthrax red, or anthraquinone red. To highlight the red area, I use a mix of anthraquinone red, titanium white, and a little chromium oxide. I usually like to add a very light, desaturated green to my reds to create the highlight color instead of using pure white. The green hue helps shift the red to more of a light brownish red color. It's not working quite as expected here. It still looks a little too pink to my eyes. Perhaps I needed to use a little more chromium oxide or a different green altogether. Maybe Perylene green diluted heavily with titanium white would have worked. To correct the pink look of the highlights, I simply return to anthraquinone red and thin it way down with water. I glaze this over the pink highlights to deepen the red hue. These little molten lava bubbles are super fun and easy to paint. I begin with a full coat of fluorescent yellow ink over the white base layer. For those in the know, all of the fire-like bits I'm painting on this dragon are actually supposed to be rotting flesh, exposed ribs, and festering pustules. This is a necrotic dragon from the Zombicide Black Plague board game. I just felt like doing something a little different with it. Then I encircle the fluorescent yellow with fluorescent orange. The deep red hue of anthrax red is perfect for the cooling outer edges of flames and lava. I place this around the very outer edge of the molten bubble. I also extend this a little bit into the dragon's flesh to make it look hot and irritated. A quick little dot of titanium white in the center of the larger bubbles will make this glow look nice and hot. The little horns, teeth, and claws are all painted basically the same. I begin with a base coat of manganese brown. This is my favorite brown paint ever. It's a great color, it has phenomenal coverage, and a perfectly flat finish. Now I'm going to have a little fun making my own necrotic flesh color by mixing a little chromium oxide into Titan Buff. Necrotic flesh is my preferred paint to use for bones and teeth. I'm mixing this to match the army painter's first generation necrotic flesh. The slight green hue isn't really noticeable on a fully painted miniature, but I feel it looks much more natural and less chalky than a lot of bone-colored paints on the market. The fact that I can easily make my own version of this with these two colors is a huge win. I don't care as much for what the army painter has done with their Fanatic line version of this paint, and my first generation bottle is almost empty. Lastly, I add a little anthraquinone red to the base of the teeth and gums. I glaze it around the base of the little horns, and I use it to polish up the dragon's nails. I had a lot of fun painting up this dragon in a way that is so different from what the sculpt and the game art presented. More importantly, it feels very productive to get this unpainted miniature off my painting desk after it's been sitting there for 2 years. I'd like to thank my incredible channel members for supporting what I do here. You too can become a channel member for as little as $1.99 per month and receive perks such as early access to videos, extended versions of our painting tutorials, and even a tier that lets you decide which miniature I paint next. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to join our growing community of painters going off script with their art.